Well, I think as chaplains, we're very keen to engage with the school community as best we can and to deliver the best RO and the best time for reflection as we can. And so that started us thinking about that we need to hear and to listen to the pupils themselves and to hear what they make of the existing programs that we have and how we could do that better. Now, that happened at the same time as a change in the senior leadership team, and the head teacher at that point really wanted a stronger pupil voice to be heard on the chaplaincy team. And so we had her complete backing, and in fact, the whole backing of the senior leadership team to look at developing a pupil chaplaincy group. And that was really important that we do that. But at the end of the day, it was all about trying to do what we're doing much better. I think the pupil chaplaincy bit has certainly happened several years ago, and maybe Catherine will be able to let us know when this actually set up. It feels quite a long time ago, but no, it was well before lockdown. And in fact, we see that that is the way forward. In fact, we had great plans for developing it, which have been put on the shelf at the moment during this period of lockdown. But no, we've been having pupil chaplains for quite a considerable amount of time. We were struggling to find chaplains to fill the roles. And so we actually said we have to be creative in this way, and why not use another resource in this school, namely the pupils.
Yeah, I was going to say our first session with pupil chaplains was 2018 to 2019. So that's when things started to change. And as Alan has said, you know, we did have a shift in chaplaincy team members, and we provided quite a vast range of material for assemblies, whether that be the large assemblies or whether it was a termly assembly. And you know, it wasn't just a short 10-15 minute assembly we'd be looking at an hour's assembly, and where we'd provide lots of time for reflection, challenges, music, and inviting the whole school. So when people started to say, can I become involved in assemblies, that made us start to think, okay, how can we involve these? And that's where the pupil chaplaincy idea came from.
Yeah, so just to add on the back of that, I think that's been the exciting thing, is it's a huge history. In fact, the history goes, way, way before any of us, where the schools always had a good relationship with the chaplains and getting pupils in. And recently, some of the pupils were approaching us saying, we'd like to get involved. And it was kind of a bit natural from that and very exciting. I think well, one of the first three we kind of put out, we're looking for chaplains based on some of the pupils saying, we would like to take part, we would like to do a song, I'd like to help with the PA, I would like to help with. So we said, well, this is an opportunity. So we asked. We also targeted individuals that we knew and said, you know, this would be really good if you got involved. And they were quite chuffed to be asked. And we were even more chuffed that they said yes. We were taken aback. I think when was it, Catherine? About, was it certainly 2 or 3 years ago, when we asked for pupil chaplains, we had over 20. We kind of expected a handful. We didn't quite expect as many as that.
And I also have to say that there were people there who were very cynical about chaplaincy and who perhaps would not profess a faith. Now, this is what amazed us, that there were people who wanted, now maybe they had an agenda, I don't know, but the point was we welcomed them as much as anybody, because we felt that that was really important, to have a diverse voice on the pupil chaplaincy team. And if we were to model tolerance and respect and all of these sorts of things, then that should be seen in chaplaincy as well as anywhere in the school.
I remember the first meeting we had with the pupils, and one pupil who would say he doesn't have a belief, doesn't have a faith. And we were like, well, how are you going to fit into this group? Yet his comment was, this is really important. and it's really important that we hold and we have that faith input. I think as he put it.
Well, no, I was sort of giggling, you know, it was like some people were self-selecting, you know, they volunteered. Some of them, you know, I know that some of the seniors came along because they knew they were going to get, one, time off their subjects, and two, they were going to get a badge to put on their blazer. You know, there was a benefit to coming into the chaplaincy team. And I think as well, you know, we had children, our own children who were involved, which we knew could be role models to younger members in the school who had been previously involved in assemblies, but not in planning, you know, so that was a good way to sort of get people involved. And then their friends thought, actually, I'd like to be involved in this too. So yeah, we did have a wee carrot of a badge for the seniors that they received that said chaplaincy, but it was really good how the pupils then just developed, you know, as Bruce said, they developed their value and worth, and that this was a really important thing to be involved with the school. And it was them having a bit of choice as to what we were doing at the assembly, so they took ownership of what we were doing, and that is a really big thing in the school, taking ownership of what we were providing. You know, it was involving topics that were relevant to them, but actually also delivered through the lens of Christianity. You know, as a chaplaincy team, it was really important that what we were delivering was through the lens of Christianity and our personal faith journeys, but also challenging the pupils on a moral scale. You know, where do you stand in this, and questioning them in relation to our beliefs. You know, so seeing the development of that over the years has been really positive.
I think it works because we all want it to work. And in fact, it comes back to that word respect. So one of the things we did, for example, was we did electronic polls for Christmas time. And we said things like, well, what's the most important thing in Christmas? Now, we knew fine well we were opening ourselves up to possible silly remarks made by pupils, but we embedded these silly remarks in what we delivered. So respecting the voice of that person who made the silly remark. But at the same time, we were also able to say that actually Christ was the most important thing, because that was the top result that came back. So in everything that we're trying to do, there is a tension there, Steve, you're quite right. But in everything we're doing, we're trying to still respect the people's voice and what they're trying to say to us, whilst we have the integrity to keep to what we believe and say what we feel, but asking them to work out their worldview based on the stuff they're hearing. So yeah, there is a creative tension there.
Right.
I think as well that
no, you go.
the pupils know it's a chaplain's assembly, so they're fully aware whether it's a house chaplain's assembly or the full Christmas or Easter assembly. So pupils of other faiths or no faiths do have the option to opt out of an assembly, but I've found that in recent years there have been less people opting out, and people of other faiths have been coming into the assemblies and enjoying it and commenting and asking questions. You know, so I think it's really important that pupils ask questions, even though they may have no faith or a different faith. They can then have a conversation, and that's becoming more common within our school.
Yeah. I think one of the most important things that we did at the very first meeting, when we got them together and we had a whole mixture there, those with faith and no faith, was we took them seriously. We listened to the voice. We didn't kind of perceive the end result, this is where we were going to get you to regardless, but we heard, and it did shape, you know, what works, what doesn't work. And some of the answers came back were really encouraging, and some of them were less encouraging, but that let us hear. During that time when we kind of heard the voice, heard their reaction, we said, this is the aim, this is our plan. What works? What's your thoughts? What's your input to that? And we had a room full of people with faith, no faith, etc. But there's a richness from that as we looked at quite big issues and how we could take those into times of reflection.
And the other thing I would want to say about that is the fact that, you know, we have all year groups. This is not just a certain year group that's involved. We're trying to get S1 to S6, male, female, all academic abilities, and we're working together. Yeah, it's when it works, it's really good, and there's a lot of fun. And I think probably some of the cynics probably question what they see from that. Actually, I think it challenges some of that.
Parents of some of our pupils, I think I found it really encouraging, because it's given them the pupils confidence in what they're doing. And you know, when I go back to the ownership title, you know, we had some pupils who on a day of an assembly were really, really quiet, but there was a vacancy that suddenly appeared because someone dropped out a drama, and they took part and just stood in to the drama, you know, and then become much more confident, and they were more respected by their peers as well. And the parents, I can see, you know, what they're actually achieving from being involved in the chaplaincy team. So I think it's a really positive thing that parents see for their children that are involved.
And I think it sits within a wider context of what chaplaincy in the school is all about anyway. Chaplaincy isn't just about evangelizing. It's not that at all. It's about helping people to understand their spiritual self and working out where their response to some of that. And it's all about these other capacities that are part of curriculum for excellence. We've got a part to play in that as well as chaplains. So yeah, this is where the support of the senior management team to have a good member of staff that liaises with us is absolutely essential in all of this. We took that very seriously, the training of this, and we asked the senior leadership team to give, I think it was a whole morning off of school for all our pupil chaplains.
Sorry, Alan, can you just come in there? We met with the head teacher, and I think that's one of the things that fascinated me, because we went in a bit apologetic with what can you give us, which is right, that's sort of hard. And we kind of expected, well, maybe a lunchtime, maybe a break, or maybe after school. Yeah. But the head teacher's reply was, "What do you want the whole day?" And I was like, whoa, slow down. We're not ready quite for a whole day. So we said, well, maybe half a day. And then she said, well, when do you want? And that was, we were very encouraged by that. Sorry, I just thought it was just quite funny how that came about.
I know, I'll absolutely reinstate that the support of the senior leadership team is absolutely key to this. And the senior leadership team would have given us more time, but we ended up with a morning, I think, one morning to launch this. And all of us and the chaplaincy team took this very seriously. We created packs, we had materials printed, we had refreshments on arrival, we had name badges. We took it like a really proper professional in-service training course for the pupils. And we wanted to raise the profile chaplaincy and again communicate to all those people who were coming in that this was something of value and of worth, and we were grateful for them to be part of that. So the key thing was at that point just getting them to think a little bit what they thought chaplaincy was all about. Quite interesting to hear their voice about that, but also just to share quite openly and honestly the regulations, the Scottish Government documentation all about chaplaincy, ARO, time for reflection, the whole thing, which again just let them see what the sort of parameters we're working in. And then it started to get personal about choices, the choices they were able to make. And maybe Bruce wants to say something about that, because he spent some time on that section about what they felt they were able to contribute to the chaplaincy team. Because one of the things we didn't do was say to them all that they had to deliver something. they could be part of the chaplaincy team as in whatever way that they wanted to be. And again, that just made it a safe space for people to be part of something.
Yeah, no, it was great at the first time that we had together, all sitting in a circle with the refreshments, and they're really chuffed with the badges. It's amazing what a badge means to a pupil in 6th year, let alone 1st year. But one of the things we wanted to do was not go in and say, this is what we're doing. We wanted to hear a realistic, what is chaplaincy at? Where is your buy-in to this? We wanted you to have an ownership with us. So we gave them cards to fill out that I basically asked them exactly that. Who are you? What's your participation? And that could just be a supportive role to leading at the front, to all sorts of things. But we then said to them, here's the subjects that we're looking at. And we were picking up on the whole aspect of choices. And there's 3 particular reflections that we're going to do. Who am I on identity? Where do I fit in on belonging? And what difference can I make, which is purpose? And we split them into groups, and we said, well, before we put pen to paper, all we've got is the subject titles, the headings. How can we tackle that? What do we want to achieve by that? What do they mean to you? And give us your thoughts. So we literally had the 3 groups that they rotated around those questions. And from the feedback, that shaped together what we're going to do. So we had some pupils who went off and did a poll, did interviews with other pupils, a whole range of things. So that was I think that's basically.
While others were involved in the art drama, the lighting, the sound, the whole thing, yeah. Tried to involve people.
I think for me as well, it meant that my job became a little bit easier, because where I was the person running around the school trying to organise everything, the pupils then took responsibility to have conversations with other departments to say, we need this, what can you offer? We need this. Or even if it was stealing resources from the art department, because they were very good at that I wasn't good at, so there were benefits, to have them there. It reduced my load a little bit by having this committee that would work together to produce what we needed to support what was happening in the final assemblies.
And it was very interdisciplinary or cross-curricular in its style, because as a result of this, our links as chaplains with other departments like music and RMPS and history and especially at remembrance time, getting the history department involved, that was all possible because pupils were already involved in the department. So it was good for them to say, actually, we need to look at this element and how can this department to support us. So it was great for a whole school thing.
Pupil chaplains keep the main chaplains on their toes, because they have to make them think out the box a bit more. Alan said earlier about polls. I don't think we would have been courageous enough to do polls if it wasn't for the pupil chaplains being involved, to help us go, yeah, we can do this. So I think, it's made us have to be more and more creative. And I think that's what works really well with the chaplaincy team. We all have different skills, and the pupils all have different skills. So it means that we can challenge ourselves more and become more creative in what we deliver. And it also becomes inclusive of the whole school and not just a select few that are helping within the chaplaincy team.
I liked what you said, Steve, about how does this make it work? And I do think it does require the chaplains to let go some of their control and their power. And to have that mutual respect. And the 3, well, certainly the 3 of us get on extremely well. We come from slightly different places and we look at things in slightly different ways, but still there's that determination to work together. And that carries on with the pupil chaplaincy team. In many ways, to use the same illustration, a lot of our pupil chaplains are story chaplains. They're helping us do that. But we were looking at developing a pupil listening scheme with the pupil chaplains, which sadly has put in abeyance with lockdown. And that was at the early start of saying, how could we serve the school? That's always the thing that we try and do as chaplains. How do we serve the school? How do we serve the staff? What does the school need chaplains to do? And one of the things we thought actually is for the pupil chaplains to become involved in a pupil listening service. And we were at the early days of exploring that with folks when lockdown came. So we've got a lot of work still to do with that, but that's where one direction we could be heading in the future.
I think when you say how is it developed, I think the relationship, slightly maybe different from your question, but something that's been very significant is over the years, that relationship we built with them, where yes, it's appropriate. Yes, we're still the kind of adult in that relationship, but there's a warmth, there's almost a banter. We get on very well as chaplains, and they've come into that in the right level, in the right way, and engage with that. It's scary too, because letting go of control, we like control, we like to hold things, and to let go and think we've got a week before we're doing a reflection, and you're kind of like, I'm sure they'll do it, I'm sure they'll do it. And when they arrive and you think, oh, not quite what I kind of thought there, can be scary, but also immensely rewarding when I remember going into into the drama class to look at this sketch and to tweak it, and they just nailed it. They were looking at respect, and they created boxes where you had to stand in them, and it was illustrating the whole point. And it was standing back and watching them and thinking, they've done it without us. They've done it themselves. And it carried a stronger message, but it can be scary too, because you're never quite sure where it's going to go. I remember meeting one pupil over lockdown, talking about that relationship outside of a supermarket as I was coming out with my mask on. And this pupil goes, "Hi, Bruce." And I thought, who are you? I can't recognize you with the mask. And then I suddenly clicked. And it was this the warmth of that relationship that we had in school, and acknowledgement. And he actually had COVID, so we started sharing that, and I went away feeling that's a privilege. That's a real privilege.
I think the rest of the school have great respect for the pupil chaplains in general. So, for example, I find there's spontaneous applause at the end of some of their input into time for reflections or in other events that we do in the school. It's not asked for, but they do it. On the whole, I think the vast majority of pupils see their contemporaries standing there speaking or acting or singing or delivering something, and there is a respect there, and I think that is generally well thought of across the school. So I think there is a positive response to that. I don't know, and I'm looking to Catherine here, whether or not there has been any negative situations where people have been targeted because they have been pupil chaplains, but I have not known any of that.
I haven't seen any negativity at all, only other people wanting to join the chaplaincy team because they see their friends doing it. Yeah. I think the other big thing, pupil chaplaincy is, another part of pupil voice, which is really strong in our school. So the pupil voice team is well respected, the pupil chaplaincy team is all well respected as well. And I think, being on a pupil voice team is really, really important, because it helps people learn about tolerance and resilience, and it helps them overcome their own inner fears. That helps them to develop into confident individuals, and then they can also help other people develop tolerance and resilience within themselves. So it does link back to the whole moral aspect of what, and spirituality of what chaplaincy is. You know, what they are doing as a pupil team is just supporting the spiritual and moral development of the pupils within the school. And I think that's really, really important.
I think you're absolutely right. Interesting question, that has there been any negative amongst pupils? There hasn't really, but partly because it sounds a bit big-headed. I don't mean it that way, because they've been part of it, but it's been quality what they've come into. You know, there's been, I'll put my name to that because it's of a level that looks good. We did the remembrance service in the school, and it had drama and music and art, and all the departments were involved. It was incredible. So the quality is something they could put their names to. Interestingly enough, I would say that's actually had the reverse, because there's been some potential negativity from some of the teachers. One or two who would say, why are you here? What gives you the right to do this? And although, yes, we've got very strong answers for that, but they don't really want the answers. They just want we don't really want you here. But the pupils have helped in making that voice a quieter voice, because it's so strong that, you know, this is so significant, what's happening within the pupils, with what we're delivering. So the teachers who would potentially be quite vocal have become quieter.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think also the themes that we have discussed over the last 3 years have been really, really important. I know Bruce alluded to the identity part of our themes. One of the other themes that came from the pupils was taking your mask off, you know, how we hide behind the mask, which is a huge thing, and especially with the mental health of people as well. You know, it's developing topics that can be quite sensitive to pupils, but they're not frightened to approach it in a way that's accessible to all pupils from S1 to S6. And I think they take pride in being involved in those type of assemblies. And I think with respect through the school, we have focused on our school values and aims, which are ambition, respect, and equity. And we used an assembly to focus on each of those. You know, so we were also reinforcing what we were doing within the whole school. So it became part of the whole school. The school chaplaincy team, the chaplains that are sitting in front of me here, are part of the school. They are not a separate entity from the school. They are part of the school makeup, furnishings, whatever you want to call them. And they're very valued within the school. If we look at things like curriculum for excellence and the 7 principles, you know, what we said about our assemblies, that there is personalisation and choice, because pupil chaplains offer opinions as to what is relevant to the pupils in the school at this present moment. They offer emotional processing, thoughts as to what is suitable for the pupils that will challenge in a way that can be enjoyable. You know, the assemblies have to be enjoyable. If they're not enjoyable, they'll switch off. You know, but they're obviously enjoyable, because when we have the senior assemblies, they keep coming back. You know, they come to the assemblies that they're not supposed to be at because they've already been, but they want to come back again. You know, so they're obviously enjoyable. And we need to make sure that the message is effective, and they help to do that. Because we have a plan of what they're doing, there's clear progression in our assemblies. And that only happens because the pupils give their input into that. The topics are relevant to the 21st century, but they also help us face topics that might challenge emotionally, but they also develop breadth and depth into their understanding of what they're needing. But out of everything, we have the pupil chaplains discussions and the assemblies, which are done in a safe and nurturing way to enhance the pupils' development.